Hi everyone, that's just joining at the minute. We'll be starting in a minute or two. We're going to wait for everyone to come in, join the webinar. See quite a lot of people joining already, which is really good. We'll just wait a little bit and then we'll get started. Hello to everyone that's just joining. We're just waiting another minute or so until everyone joins the webinar, and then we'll get started with everything. If you have any questions, if you can pop them in the Q&A function. Okay, I'm going to get started, and then this is being recorded anyway, so we can, anyone that joins late will be able to watch the recording. So hi everyone, welcome to our cyber simulation webinar for the West Midlands. We're going to work through a cyber scenario of a phishing attack. And I am Marta, I'm operations manager at Digital Care Hub. So I help run all the different programs that we have at Digital Care Hub, like the Cyber Resilient Care program, which this webinar series is part of, and also the Better Security, Better Care program, which helps you complete the data security and protection toolkit. You might have heard of it. I'm joined by Nick and Dan, and I'll let them introduce themselves when the presentation bit comes in. But yeah, we'll first run through some of the key things that will the agenda of today. So the technical issues, just so you know, you're on mute and can be seen, so don't worry about that. This webinar is being recorded, but as we say, you won't appear in it. These use the Q&A function, so you'll find a little button that says Q&A if you're on a laptop to ask any questions, please. And if you're on a phone, tap on your screen to see the controls, choose more, and then Q&A. If we can't answer something or we run out of time, you can add your email to the Q&A, and then we'll answer you over email, or we can drop our email in the chat, and then you can email us directly. This will last no longer than an hour, so make sure we don't take a lot of your time, and you will get access to the recording and all the slides and the presentation and everything. So what are we going to do today? We're going to go through what the Cyber Resilience Centre is and what they do, what they offer, and Nick is going to run us through a bit of a presentation on cyber attacks as well in the region. Then we're going to go over the Cyber Resilient Care. So this is the program that sits on top of this webinar series and why this is important and why we have created it. And then we're going to run through our scenario. So we'll do an introduction of this phishing attack scenario. We'll go through different rounds of questions, and you'll have the chance to interact with us and tell us what option you think is the most correct, depending on the rounds that we're in. And we'll do this through the polls or Zoom polls, so it'll just pop up on your screen. And then we'll look at the summary, key takeaways of the session, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So any questions that you input in the Q&A, we'll be answering at the end. So without further ado, I think we hand over to Nicholas from the West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre.
Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Nick, and I'm the Business Development Manager at the West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre. The Cyber Resilience Centres, we're policing-led organisations, and my manager is a serving police officer. We're also a not-for-profit organisation. WMCRC is one of 9 centres across the UK offering free government-backed guidance to small businesses, SMEs, supply chains, and third sector organisations. We also have a national group. So the National Resilience Group works with 26 academia across the UK to offer cyberpower services. Some of the services they can provide are security awareness training and vulnerability assessments, which is delivered by our students on the CyberPath program and supervised by the national group. Next slide, please. So why cybercrime? Well, cybercrime is big business. It's estimated that the UK economy lost over 30.5 billion in 2023, and on average, a business suffers a cyber attack every 44 seconds. Information about people, stolen intellectual property, and other credentials can sell more than the price of gold or oil. The government is actually treating cybercrime as a tier 1 threat to the UK, which is the same level as terrorism due to the impact on the economy and national infrastructure. Next slide, please. So the figures displayed here are from the Cyber Security Breaches Survey that the government carried out in 2023, and it shows the percentage of organisations that have experienced cybercrime. It's worth noting, though, that these figures only represent organisations that could tell if they'd had a breach. Next slide, please. So cyber attacks remain a persistent threat to the NHS and other organisations. As you can see here in the first article, the company suffered a breach and personal information of over 80,000 people were stolen. And think back to June last year, a pathology testing organisation was attacked who were part of the supply chain for the NHS in London. Operations had to be cancelled and it caused widespread disruption to the hospitals that they offered services to. Next slide, please. So from the policing threat intelligence, phishing attacks, business email compromise, supply chain attacks, and social media, social engineering attacks remain the top threats to organizations. But who actually commits these crimes? Well, bad actors can fall into different categories. You have your individuals or small groups of people who are working for financial gain or to cause damage to companies and their website or infrastructure for credibility and notoriety. Then you have hacktivists. These groups often have political motivations and motives. Just think about Just Stop Oil. If they decided to carry out a cyber campaign, they may look to attack oil companies or companies who use oil products. Attacks can also happen from within. If you have disgruntled employees who have access to your systems, they could look at damaging your infrastructure or take valuable data with them. And lastly, there are nation-state actors. These are groups or organizations who are employed by or affiliated with governments who are looking to steal information or take down critical infrastructures such as the NHS or the energy grid. Next slide. So why do attacks happen? Well, phishing, which is an attack via an email, is one of the main ways that cyber attacks happen. Action Fraud received over 23,000 reports a month, and this number will only increase. It is important to note that not everybody reports an attack, so that number may well be a lot higher than reported. Awareness is also key. However, when companies were asked about training, only 18% of them have security awareness training in place for their staff. So if we increase the staff's awareness, we are less likely to suffer an attack because we are more aware of the risks. Next slide, please. So how can the West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre help your organisation? Well, we offer a free core membership where we send out monthly newsletters which contains informative articles and guidance. Part of the core membership is having 30-minute meetings with a member of our team to chat about your organisation's current cyber posture and offer guidance and tools to help with cyber resilience. We also work with Cyber Essentials partners who can help an organisation obtain Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. Next slide, please. Sadly, it's not a case of if but when a cyber attack will occur. And organisations need to be able to understand the risk to make better decisions to help them withstand and recover from cyber attacks. It is everyone's responsibility, from the senior management team to employees in the community, to play their part in cybersecurity. And last slide, please. So there's a couple of helpful links as well that you may want to look at afterwards. And thank you very much. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Nick. I think hopefully that sets us up brilliantly for our cyber incident scenario as well. So we've all come across that journey and obviously now a bit more aware of the West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre. So do check out the website. I can also recommend definitely signing up for all of the free support they offer. So I should say as well, I'm Daniel O'Shaughnessy. I'm the Head of Programme Delivery for Digital Care Hub. I work very closely with Martha on all the associated programmes. So cyber resilient care. So why does this matter? And I won't cover some of the stuff that Nick's covered there brilliantly. I don't think I could in at the same level of expertise. But obviously, as Nick pointed out, cybercrime is becoming ever more common, and it's getting to the point where it's essentially when an attack will happen rather than if an attack will happen. So when it does, yes, it's important that you've got all the things in to prevent, but it will happen. So what do we do? How do we respond? How do we recover under pressure? And we put under there, this could define your organization's survival. And genuinely, this is a both disaster response in the same way that you would find for a fire drill or a flood or something similar. This is something that is an existential threat to your organization. So not to terrify everyone, but it is something that is incredibly important to take into account. And since it is something that will eventually happen, we've taken this scenario from the point of it's already too late. A phishing scenario has happened. We can't prevent it from happening. So how do we respond? Obviously, thinking about our sector, we have highly sensitive personal data, both about our service users, our staff, finances, both for service users and staff sometimes. And we're not a sector that is particularly IT driven or skilled. We are here to deliver care to people. We have person-centered care. We're not IT experts. And you know, I can't think of any way that you would have a registered manager's role, for example, that would demand you be a cyber person. That's not the case. And we have to view everything we do from that lens. And be able to, you know, when we're preparing our business continuity plan, we are not technical people. So let's try and keep it simple for ourselves. So the situation we've laid out here, a staff member's accidentally paid an invoice to a fixed supplier after receiving a phishing email. So you, as someone who isn't technical, you find out after this payment's been processed, and you've got to decide how to respond. And you will see on the right here just an example that our technical cyber lead who's designed this presentation has drawn up. It essentially asks, it says urgent, overdue invoice payment required. It comes from a slightly fishy looking email address. And it essentially says, look, our bank details have changed, which I'm sure as if you've ever dealt with finances, you know this happens every now and then. So that's not necessarily in itself a massive problem. But it's as the red flags begin to compound onto themselves with a slightly different, slightly fishy email address, something that's asking for immediate payment, bank details have changed, the payment confirmation email doesn't line up with the same place that the invoice is coming from. But we can see here they've given a nice message afterwards to say, if you already made the payment, disregard this message, which sounds like something a normal finance person might put in an email address, in an email. So we can see how easy it is to fall for something like that. I'm sure you've seen examples of these in your own organization. Sometimes they come impersonating your finance lead or your chief exec or somebody from another organization. So this has happened, it's been paid. What do we do? So we'll be doing a bit of an interactive scenario. So you'll get a Zoom pop-up fairly soon. I think probably after we've read out some of the options that will allow you to select which one we want to do. Important to say, try and do it from the perspective that you have from your organization. If you don't feel comfortable with that, pretend it's Dan's care. You know, that's fine. We can say that I'm the senior responsible board member here. If you feel more comfortable in that way. But to read out the scenario, we're looking at what do we do first? So the staff members paid the fake supplier, the invoice is for a significant amount, and the staff members understandably quite worried they're going to get into some trouble. We've got four options. A, contact our IT supplier and our bank to investigate, secure the systems and attempt to recall the payment. B, ignore the problem, but give the staff member an official warning for failing to follow policy. C, investigate quietly by yourself. Take your time to review the staff member's email and invoices carefully to confirm it's really a scam before we take any rash decisions. Or D, contact the bank, try to recall the payment, but hold off and engage in the IT or alerting the rest of the team until we know for sure what's happened. So if you can launch the poll, there we go. So feel free to vote on it. It's sort of like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but there's no millionaire involved.
We wish we had the budget to
We
pay for that.
That's quite a lot of answers there. We'll give it a few 10 seconds or more just to let people fill in. They might still be reading through some of the options. And through some of these options, I should say, some of them are more obviously good or bad options than others, and that's intentional because we will walk through each of these answers and see what would have happened depending on what you as a group would have chosen. I'm just looking at it going up. I think.
Gonna give it.
Oh no, there's still a couple more.
Yeah. Gonna give it a few more seconds. Hopefully, the screen comes up for everyone in the middle. Should do. Okay, I'll stop it now and share the results.
There we go. So we can see 80% have selected A. And let's actually write this one down so we can come back to this. So 80% A, and 20% have said option D. Okay, cool. In that case, if I'll close that on my screen. So this is our round one, and I'll make sure I'm keeping us to time. So option A, which 80% of us chose, is immediately contact the supplier, the bank, investigate, secure the system, recall the payment. And as you'll see on this screen, we've got the option. We've got in the middle a summary of effectively what we do. There's a happy face on the left, which is obviously the good things that happen, a frowny face on the right, which is the bad things that happen. And then at the bottom, we've got sort of the consequences of the action if we would have chosen that option. So the summary, we move quickly, both on financial and security fronts. The bank freezes or reverses the payment potentially, and the IT supplier can check for any deeper breaches. The staff feel encouraged because we've taken some decisive action, and the anxious employee feels supported rather than punished, which reduces that fear across the team. Good things, high chance of recovering the funds. We're proactive about increasing our security, and we've been quite transparent with people, so it helps prevent that panic and blame culture. Frowny things that have happened. Immediate coordination might actually disrupt all of the work, so continuity of care. And it creates a short-term alarm if staff don't quite understand what's happened. So since 80% of us picked this one, let's go with this as our choice. So this is what happened to our Dan's Care organisation, if you like. So because we acted swiftly, the fake supplier account is flagged. Thankfully, nobody else can fall victim to this scammer. The bank manages to recall half of the funds, although the rest of them are sent abroad. Our IT supplier discovers that the PDF that was breached allowed the account to be taken over, but it's now been contained by the IT supplier. Morale is now steady since staff trust the organisation is prepared and we can handle mistakes without any undue blame. We won't spend as long on every single one of these options, but since this is the one we've picked, the other thing that probably is to highlight, I would say this is the strongest option. It's not always as clear cut, but what we wanted to highlight with some of these is that even if you pick what might be considered to be the strongest option, there are always negatives to these things. There are always positives. Even if you pick something that might look like quite a silly option to pick, there are benefits and negatives to picking those options. So it's good to keep those into consideration. But in this one, we've acted quite decisively. And importantly to flag on this one, we only got half the funds back, even though we took what might be considered the correct route. Sometimes you can do all of the right things and still not get the perfect outcome. And that's okay. That's part of disaster planning and disaster recovery. It's about mitigating and reducing the impact of the disaster, not getting everything perfect every single time. If we'd have picked option B, which thankfully nobody picked, ignore it, give the staff a warning, tell them to follow policy. We wouldn't have addressed the scam itself, so that threat still would have remained. The people are still on our systems doing God knows what. We've instead decided to focus on disciplining the staff, which makes it a fearful atmosphere. People aren't going to want to come forwards to say, hey, maybe I also click something, because they'll see it doesn't actually affect the outcome. And all you've done is come down hard on the staff member. Maybe you've got rid of them. Maybe they've been put on temporary leave. And again, staff will then hide mistakes in order to avoid those repercussions. The happy things, it's a clear signal that you've stopped them from violating policy and there are consequences. And the short term, you possibly resolve the incident, at least from a following policy point of view. Frowny things are there's no resolution of the underlying threat. You damage morale quite significantly. And you haven't really stopped the ongoing fraud if the scammer's got access to your IT systems, for example. The consequence, if we would have picked this one, is the staff are demoralised, eventually leaves. Others, seeing the blame placed on them, become reluctant to report errors and mistakes. I've also listed it there that says it increases staff turnover, which is already a problem for our sector with recruitment and retention. Meanwhile, the scammer remains undetected. They've taken over your internal email account through this PDF that was never investigated and has led to further exploits and a significant loss for the organisation. So this is that sort of existential threat to the business we were talking about. Option C, which again nobody picked, is to investigate quietly on your own and just confirm that it's actually really a scam before taking any decisions. Interestingly, lots of people do pick this option in real world scenarios. They'll think, well, hang on a minute, I don't want to be an alarmist and sound the alarm too early. Let's just double check and make sure. So what would have happened is we'd have tried to confirm everything personally so that we don't raise a false alarm. The delay can be critical, which is the important part here. If they've compromised more accounts, so more of our IT systems, and they're planning another invoice scam, we could in fact lose even more time, take even further damage, and even some of our partners in various systems could then be getting scam invoices sent from your organisation to them. The staff member remains anxious about the whole thing, and they're unsure whether they should speak to others or whether they should wait for your personal investigation to conclude. So the happy thing is it raises less risk of overreacting if it is a small issue. And you gain a detailed knowledge of how the scam occurred because you've done quite a thorough investigation. There's sad things that have happened. We've lost time because the bank can't attempt to recall if you wait for too long. It's unclear because what you've essentially said to the staff is the policy is let me have a look at it, which is not very clear. And it doesn't really give them clear timelines. It doesn't give them a clear thing of what to say to the other staff members and so on. And there's a possibly much larger financial impact on the organisation. So the result would have been that by the time we finish, the scammers moved and stolen funds to multiple overseas accounts. We can't recover the money. We'd also mean that the staff member's account was compromised and used to send further phishing emails using our official email addresses, which just results in even more scamming, even more confusion. And the final one, which 20% of you picked, which was to contact the bank and try and recall the payment, but hold off on engaging the IT or alerting the rest of the team until we know exactly what happened. So the summary here is that we partially addressed the financial issue by contacting the bank, which means we might recover some funds. We haven't had that delay that we saw in the last option. However, on the IT security side, the problem can remain unattended, allows any compromised emails or system access issues to persist. The staff remain unaware of any phishing threats, so others can fall victim to similar scams. The original staff member can still feel a little bit isolated, and the breach might expand because we haven't alerted IT as to what actions we might or might not want to take. The good things, we've got partial recovery of the funds. We've alerted the bank quickly, and we've avoided any sort of large-scale immediate panic, and we've essentially tried to prioritise day-to-day operations and our funding, our budget, etc. Sad face things are we've unaddressed the security risk. The attacker may still have some sort of access to all of our systems, which we don't want them to have, obviously. The staff aren't necessarily aware because we haven't alerted the rest of the team, and so they could be vulnerable to the same scam. And if multiple staff have clicked on similar links, this breach can actually spread further before IT is even aware there's a problem. So for 20% of you, the bank would freeze the payment just in time, saving some of the funds, but the scammer's already taken over an email account using that malicious PDF file. Using your own official email, they can send more phishing emails undetected, and days pass before everyone in the organization realizes actually the full extent of the problem. This forced the IT supplier to do a much more costly cleanup, and it can add thousands to the expenses. It can increase your insurance premium. If any of you have ever got cyber insurance, for example, as part of it, it can be quite a lengthy process, particularly if you go through your standard broker. So that gives us a bit of an idea of what the first four options are. And we can see, again, this isn't necessarily a bad or the worst choice. It's just a choice that has different consequences. And these consequences happen to be things that we don't want the hacking to be able to do, i.e. retain access to our systems. So looking at it then, it's a day after the incident. Let's say we've taken that option A, we've informed the IT supplier, etc. We've informed the staff. It's been a day since the incident, and the staff member still feels quite guilty, understandably. Rumours are starting to spread that something might have happened. How do we communicate this to our internal and external parties? We can do option A, wait for the official guidance from senior management or your IT supplier before notifying any external people. Let me just move that one out of the way so I can get it. Internally provide a brief heads up to staff that an issue has occurred. B, we don't need the reputational hit. Downplay the incident. Tell staff it was a technical issue. Don't make a mention to it about anyone externally unless you absolutely have to legally. Publicly announce the breach on your website and social media. Share a complete phishing email to show exactly how it happened. The transparency will raise awareness and help other people avoid the scam. It's very helpful. And we can use our business continuity plan as option D to guide our communication. So internally, staff receive clear guidance on the incident, and externally, only those people who are affected are informed. We can report to the regulators if we're legally required. So feel free to pick your options there. Again, there will be no millionaires at the end of this, but hopefully we'll all learn something. Probably important to say, as some of you are voting on this as well, you will get the slides for all of this afterwards. So if this is something that you think, oh, I might actually run this with my team, you might do it in a team meeting or a supervision or an induction training for new staff, please do use these resources. You're more than welcome to. There we go. We have an interesting split. Yeah, so I won't give up the numbers just yet.
Gonna give it a few more seconds.
Yeah.
More people to vote. There we go.
There we go. Okay, so we're split almost to 5% have gone with A. And then we almost have an 80-20 split almost. 77% have gone for D, and 18% have gone for C. So really interesting split. Okay, I've noted those down, so we'll come back to those as we go. So let me just make sure I'm on time. Yeah, we're doing okay for time. So for round 2, option A, wait for the official guidance from senior management and IT supplier. Don't notify anyone externally apart from them, and internally just provide a heads up. So 5% if you pick this. So the summary is you do avoid confusion by waiting for the official stance. External stakeholders might be left in the dark, which does cause a bit of frustration. And we've all had that thing before where you kind of go, this feels like a bit of a cover up. They can feel that way. And if you think about how we handle things like safeguarding, there's an interesting interplay of information of who you tell and who you don't tell. And internally, staff only get minimum information. Good things, we're consistent, we've got an aligned message until we've got final details. And the other good thing is we've avoided panic and we've controlled the flow of information. They are good things. The negative things are we've delayed the information to external stakeholders who it might be their personal details that we're holding or their financial data. Staff only have partial information, which can fuel a bit of speculation. It could also appear that you're withholding the truth if people find out through another channel first. So for those of you who pick this one, by the time a formal statement's released, the family members of service users have heard rumours from staff and other service users. Trust erodes a little bit because they weren't fully informed. Meanwhile, while we're waiting on this official guidance, a suspicious-looking email appears in the inbox, and there's a risk that somebody can click it because we haven't really told staff much about the situation. Option B, again, nobody picked this, really glad to see. However, this is one of the options. Again, I have watched multiple large tech companies do exactly this. Everybody tells them not to, and yet someone somewhere, usually in a boardroom, will go, we don't need the reputational hit on this. Downplay the incident, tell everyone it was a technical issue, essentially cover the whole thing up. It's the stupid option. I can say that because none of you picked it. However, people do this in the heat of the moment. This is a really common approach to any kind of cyber incident. So I won't spend too much on this one because we know why it's the problem, but we essentially avoid any of the scrutiny and questions. Everything remains a secret. The regulators like the ICO should be informed, and if they're not, you can get some really severe fines for those sorts of things. Again, potentially business-ending fines. Families or service users might lose trust if they learn of the breach at a later date. So again, we're not doing anything to safeguard our people, really. So no immediate public fuss on external inquiries, and there's minimum short-term disruption into daily operations. Great. But on the negative side of things, there's a really high risk of regulatory consequences. There's a loss of trust from pretty much everyone you engage with once the truth does eventually come out, and often a large percentage of the time it does. And it creates a real culture of secrecy, and it discourages staff from reporting in the future. If they see you covering stuff up, they're going to cover stuff up before they get to tell you about it. And you really don't want to be in that situation, especially when we think about the other things staff do, i.e. to go back to safeguarding. You don't want them covering that sort of thing up for sure. A family member overhears staff speculating about the phishing incident, raises concerns. They don't receive any satisfactory answers, so they escalate. Unfortunately, a local journalist picks up the story, which is all too common when this happens. There's a reputational damage when an external investigation finds that actually you were hacked and you covered it up. Again, this is the bad option, but so many organizations go down this route. It's mind-boggling. Often they're advised by solicitors or similar people to say, no, admit nothing. It's actually probably the worst option to take. And all of you know that on paper because it was the only option that nobody chose. Option C, which is the 20% of you chose, or a 17%, is publicly announce the breach on your website and social media. Share the email, show exactly what happens, be super transparent about the whole thing, and help raise awareness. So this is a lovely option to take. It's such a nice way, and it's something that, as our sector is quite caring, we often try to do these things to go above and beyond. But by publishing the entire email, including potentially the staff member's name or email address, we've unintentionally revealed who was targeted. So this might embarrass the staff member, expose further data. Now, publicising the email's content might give other scammers tips about our organisation structure. Something people often don't think about is if you know somebody's email is janedoe1@carecompany.com, well, great, now I can go and find out who the finance lead is, who's Deborah Stevenson.2, and I've just got to try those things. So I can try 1, 2, 3 until I eventually get the right phishing email. Really helps the scammer because you've given them the information they wanted. On the happy side, maximum transparency, always a good thing, to be honest. We always try and be as transparent as we can, which is educational, not just for you and your staff, but for other people in the sector. Fantastic. And we get some immediate awareness because everybody now knows how this scam works. The real downsides are your staff's privacy is compromised. You didn't intend to name and shame them, but you have. Reputational risk, because you've now publicly revealed internal emails. Some people might get the wrong end of the stick and think you're showing off about being careless or disorganized with sensitive information. And this could then, again, be exploited by other criminals. So even though we didn't pick this one, the community would see the real staff member's name. The staff member feels humiliated. They probably leave the organization. Meanwhile, media coverage escalates. This focuses on the exposed staff details rather than the scam message that you intended. So even though it was a nice thing we tried to do for 20% of you there, it doesn't always result in the outcome that we want. And that's the important lesson to learn from this one, is even though we try to do something nice, that's not always the end result, if you like. The intent doesn't always meet the outcome. And then for option D, which 80% or just under 80% of you chose, Use the business continuity plan to guide your communication. Internally, staff receive clear guidance on the incident and prevention, and externally, only those people who are affected are informed. We obviously report to the regulator. So we maintain openness with those staff who need to know, but protect the staff's identity. We avoid sensationalizing. The stakeholders see us taking responsible action, building trust. So in particular, I would think about your commissioner, for example. We've spoken to commissioners before, and even though some people didn't always believe them, they said, just be honest with us, be upfront, tell us, because then we can help. And ultimately, that's their line, that's our line. It is the best thing to do, is just be open and honest with your really important stakeholders. You don't need to give them all the information, but let them know it's happened. We then notify the ICO, so we remain compliant. And you may even notify CQC if continuity of care was really disrupted, for example. So happy things. We were transparent as we could be, which is great. The people affected got accurate information in a timely manner. We protected people's privacy. The staff member's name isn't broadcast, so it reduces any blame, any morale issues. And in terms of regulatory compliance, ICO, CQC, etc., are alerted, so we've avoided any serious fines. So some people might still be upset as a negative or worry about the breach. And this is the important one, even though this probably is the best answer, there will still be negatives. Some people will see that you had a breach and they will say, oh, but weren't they the people who had a cyber attack and a breach? Yes, you are. Own it. That's fine. It happened. You can't deny it. You have to be able to own it and say, yes, and here's what we did to prevent it happening in the future. And it also requires careful coordination. It's not something that you can just do. It does require you have your business continuity plan up to date. It does require that you have all the right sort of contacts available and up to date. And your staff is the result. Your families are reassured that while the breach occurred, the data is safe or being carefully monitored, and the staff know that the lessons learned without blaming the individual. So it gives us a much more supportive and not necessarily always blame-free culture, but we're not coming down on that one staff member when it was a mistake anybody could make. And your reputation actually gets largely preserved by this. That may or may not happen, but in this particular case, we've gone with, it probably gets largely preserved. It won't be perfect, you won't emerge unscathed, but it's largely preserved. And the final one is the lessons learned exercise. We're a week after the incident, you've contained the threat, communications have been handled for better or for worse, and now you've got to decide the primary next step to embed these lessons learned across the organisation. So what do we do? Do we crack down on the staff mistakes with an official policy of zero tolerance? Do we invest in cutting-edge security technology is option B? Option C is update the business continuity plan with the lessons from the incident and conduct a structured review of what happened. Or there's option D, which is the chance of this happening were pretty remote, actually. So the likelihood of it happening again is almost impossible. There's no need to dwell on it. Let's just focus on doing what we do best as an organisation, and that's delivering person-centred care. Which options would you pick? Option, I should say. Give you all a minute or so. We can see you're getting quite a few responses. There we go. Should we call it there?
10 more seconds, see if anyone else wants to participate.
Oh, yeah, there was one more then. Yep. That is a clear sort of winner on this one, isn't there?
All right. Sharing
There we
the real
go.
time.
So for option C, 96% of you picked option C, and option B, 4% of you picked option B. So I'll close that down now. And we'll go on. Okay, so option A, none of you picked this. Crack down on the staff with an official policy of zero tolerance. Again, we know this probably isn't the right option to pick, but you would be surprised how many organizations just do this. They say, no, you made a mistake. This is it now. No more clicking stupid emails. Don't do it. It's really easy in the heat of the moment to make those emotional decisions and say, no, I'm sorry, we're not doing it. So the summary for that is we decide any staff member who fails the phishing or falls for a phishing attempt or makes a security error will face strict disciplinary measures. I can't talk for that second then. Staff are on high alert, but fear of punishment discourages that open communication. Errors get hidden and underreported. So I won't spend too much on this one, but the good demonstrates security is a serious business and staff double check everything to avoid penalties. Great, okay. The negative is we create a culture of fear. Staff won't even report near misses, never mind if they've actually made a mistake. They won't ask for help. Massive increase in staff turnover because they feel unfairly punished. An incident can go unnoticed and escalate. This is the really unhealthy option. And yet again, organizations will pick this option. So I won't go into what would have happened if it would have happened, but essentially somebody else gets a suspicious link, nobody reports it, and a second breach occurs. Option B, which 4% of you picked, invest in cutting-edge security technology. So you focus on buying an advanced tool like an AI-based email filter, a threat detection software, and robust firewalls. And while those upgrades reduce the technical risk, the staff remain undertrained on what's called social engineering, so trying to get you to say things that you wouldn't or give you information they don't want to. And those policy and procedure gaps are unaddressed. So significant reduction in spam and malicious emails is the good thing, and signals to stakeholders that we're really taking this seriously and we're invested in modern technology and the digital transformation journey. The negatives is we've got a false sense of security. We're now over-reliant on tech and we ignore the human involved. We lack policy improvements or staff training, and the high cost doesn't pay off if people are still easily tricked by social engineering. Somebody calls them up and says, "Hi, it's John from finance. Can you just buy some Amazon vouchers for me?" Can go really badly. So a social engineer phones an unsuspecting staff member claiming to be from the new security upgrade team. Great, they've taken advantage of the thing we've tried to do. They believe the call is part of the fancy new system rollout. The staff member shares their password and the scammer gains access and bypasses all of the expensive tech. One to point out on this one, I'm trying very hard to keep myself to time, but this is probably an important one to point out. On every board, you will find the one person on that board who will say, "Can't we just buy a load of tech that will fix this problem?" The answer, as a registered manager, as chief exec, is either no or yes, and we should do lots of training. Option C, update our business continuity plan. So this was the one that 96% of you picked. We do a lessons learned and we do a structured review. So in summary, we organise a formal debrief where staff openly discuss what went wrong, what happened, how to prevent it. Key insights and improved protocols go into a revised business continuity plan, ensuring future incidents are handled basically in a better way. So good things, we have a holistic improvement, both technology and human processes evolve. We encourage a learning culture and staff feel safer reporting issues earlier. And we increase resilience as the business continuity plan now reflects the real world lessons. It's not just an on-paper exercise anymore. We've tested this against the real incident and here's what we learned. Time and effort. So running post-mortems and updating documentation does require coordination. And some staff might initially resist sharing mistakes, but trust typically grows once they see it's constructive rather than just something that's critical. So during this structured review, one of the team members reveals that an invoice looked normal except for a 1 instead of an I in the email address. And if you noticed right at the start, you get bonus points. By documenting these flags in these red flags in the business continuity plan and the staff guidelines, future invoice scams are spotted quickly. The staff gain confidence that mistakes can be discussed without blame. So many times when we've been speaking to care organizations and I say, "Have you been the victim of a cyber attack?" And they say no. And I say, "Tell us about the spam you get." And they say, "Oh yeah, well, so one came from our chief exec recently," and somebody else in the room goes, "Oh yeah, I got one from here too." So that's a cyber attack, guys. Someone is attempting to breach you. And option D, which nobody picked, the chance of this happening is already remote. Basically, let's just get on with our lives and forget about this problem. Again, this is very easy to do. We are an understaffed sector. We're not technical people. We might not be sure how to respond to this sort of thing. People will put their head in the sand and go full ostrich mode on things. Do expect it to happen. It will happen. So you make no policy changes, no official review and no training. The incident's forgotten about and staff aren't really sure what happened or how to prevent it. So there's no immediate workload and staff feel relieved, frankly, to not have to deal with a stressful problem. He can just get on again with providing person-centered care. There's no improvement, it's a negative. Staff get confused because they're not sure how to even detect or report this sort of thing. And again, we have massive potential for large financial or reputational damage when a future incident eventually occurs, because we haven't learned from it whatsoever, we've just moved on. So with no formal lessons learned, the same attacker attempts another phishing scheme a few months later. Because we never learned from the last one, the scam succeeds again, and it costs us even more money and funds and time. And this important part of this slide is at the last sentence: you are now on the sucker list. They keep a list of people, hackers, and they share it round, much like scam call centers do, where they will know that you are the person to call up and send an email to, because they know that you will pay out or that they can get easy access to your systems. So, in summary, preparation beats panic. So you don't want to be in the middle of any disaster, whether that's a fire, whether it's a flood, or whether it's a cyber attack, and not have a plan. I mean, you don't want to be in one anyway, but you definitely don't want to be in one without a plan. You don't want to be caught improvising. That's where mistakes happen. That's where people use their gut instinct, and sometimes it can be a bit counterintuitive, as we saw earlier with the kind of sharing a bit of a lessons learned, and sharing too openly actually can harm the organization further. It's about making sure you have the right processes in place in that business continuity plan or incident response plan. Importantly as well, test it regularly. It's really hard, and I know we don't have a whole lot of time in the sector, but just take small things to test. Send someone an email with a PDF, send someone something and say to them, okay, your computer shut down now for the rest of the next 2 hours. What would you do in that situation? Just find out what would happen. Would they even instinctively go to what's in the business continuity plan or not? Just go back, revise, much like we do with a fire drill. Do one for a cyber incident as well. And it doesn't have to be particularly complex or technical. It can literally just be the internet's off. What do we all do for the next 5 hours? Or next 3 hours, or whatever feels comfortable for your organization. It's painful in the short term, really beneficial in the long term. Timely and honest communication comes through the theme of all of these questions. So hiding the breach really basically never ends well. And clear internal messages build that trust. So even when something does happen, people know that you will communicate the truth to them regardless. Really important to be transparent. And we support our staff rather than blame them. We don't want them to fear being punished if they report things to us. We want them to be able to come forward and say, I'm not sure about this email. Okay, you don't want them doing it with every email, so don't terrify them. But you do want them to have that awareness training to be able to say, okay, I'm aware of what a spam email looks like, and I'm willing to come forward to you as my manager to say, can you just check this for me? Tech helps, of course it does, but culture counts. So don't just invest in all of the sexy technology. Really look at your policies, your reviews, the training, your awareness sessions like these. They are the bread and butter. I know you do them for lots of things. You will do them for this too. Include them in your inductions, include them in your supervisions, and look at that continuous improvement. So again, if you had a fire, you would go back and you would look at the incident and you would say, well, how did this happen? Something went wrong. What did we do in the situation in reality? And go back and update your business continuity plan. So as we've written there, review what went well, review what didn't, and feed those lessons back into your continuity plan. This one's a personal note from our cyber lead. It's a bit of a confession from him. So I thought it'd be nice he's run a couple of the other sessions, so he's had to do this confession in person live on camera. So he was once a hacker. He poked around in systems. He was a good hacker, if you like. But he knows firsthand how these really small errors can be exploited. And so we asked him, well, what's the lesson? What would you tell people to take away from this in a really simple way? He said, look, mistakes happen. People will make mistakes on a daily basis. But the best defense is being prepared for when the mistake happens, how you report it, and also knowing that you're never alone. Scammers and hackers, they will rely on you feeling isolated, feeling like they've got you basically pinned there and you can't call anyone for help. And you should always have someone that you can call for help, even if it's just to say, hang on a minute, you clicked what? That's fine. Just having that sense check can be perfect. So we asked him for 3 tips. He said, own the awkward, which is a lovely phrase, I think. I'm taking that one away in my kind of day-to-day life. It's a slightly awkward person. The sooner you admit something's gone sideways, the sooner you can fix it. I thought it was a great phrase, and it saves you all the bigger hassle later on because you can just admit, yep, I accidentally did something, please help. The strength in numbers is a really good tip. So those good relationships with your IT supplier, the Cyber Resilience Centre with Nick, and with ourselves at Digital Care Hub, or even if it doesn't have to be a whole organisation or someone external, it can just be someone who's a colleague that always finds you missing keys, somebody who you can call to and say, God, please just help me. You know, you're in a panic, something's happened. God, it's so useful to have another person there to talk to and bounce things off. It helps us keep calm. It helps us stop tunnel visioning on certain things if they're willing to help check us. And the final one is to stay calm, which these two things help with a lot. It's about preparation, it's about openness, it's about that supportive culture, all the things we've talked about. And it turns that frustrating moment into a kind of, okay, guys, we've got this, we have a plan. And his final thoughts there would be prepared, but don't be paranoid. Don't go overboard and kind of make sure every single staff member has to show you every single email. It will kill your entire free time. So thank you for being part of this session. Thank you for walking through all of the various options. I know some of them are more obvious than others, but that's intentional so that we can walk through, we can figure out why, we can really pull these things apart so we know what is a good response and what isn't. And we can understand that even great responses can't necessarily always end perfectly. And we know that bad responses can actually have some positive effects. So do we have any questions, Marta?
So not for now. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. Whilst we wait for questions, I've just launched the feedback form, just so we can get your feedback and see if we should, continue this session. So if you liked it, and develop them further into the future. But yes, any questions from anyone?
Yeah,
Nick,
please
Dan?
do. Yeah, please do fill out the feedback form. It's really helpful in us for us to understand, is this session helpful? Is it something that we should do more of? And there's a little question there as well as to whether you'd like to sign up to the Digital Care Hub newsletter. So we send these sorts of events and tips and guidance out regularly. So if you click yes, we'll be able to add you to the list. I can see lots of people have selected the option, we're already on the list. That's probably how you heard about this webinar, I guess. But if you do have any questions, anything we've spoken about, myself, Nick, or Marta, pop them in the Q&A, and we'll be able to answer them for you. We've got a few minutes left, I think. If not, we can always finish early and give you some time back to have a nice cup of tea.
And if you would like to, oh, we have a question. Is the ransomware attack one very different to this? So we'll work through different scenarios, basically. Ransomware attack scenarios rather than phishing attack. The format of the webinar is going to be the same, but the scenarios will be different. So we'll work through different scenarios, different answers, things like that. If anyone has any feedback or anything you want to tell us about this or about anything else that you've seen, or you want to know, Nick's contact, I'm just going to put our email in the chat, and then just drop us an email and just tell us whatever you want to say.
I also wanted to say to everyone, thanks so much for the engagement. It's really nice to, sometimes we've done webinars now for the past few years where a lot of it is us presenting a topic to you guys and saying, here's what you need to know. And actually it's really nice to have that feedback where we're like, okay, you're basically running the webinar. What options would you like to pick? I think you all made the sort of correct decisions, or the best decisions possible.
Okay, I don't think we have any questions. So as I said, if you have any questions after the webinar, you can contact us or Nick, and I will share the contact details for the Cyber Resilience Centre as well in an email after. You will receive the slides and the recording as well in an Eventbrite email. It'll probably be sent tomorrow. And if you have any questions about this, or you want to get involved in anything that we do, please contact us, let us know. But thank you so much for attending this, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Have a great day, guys.